17 doors, 17 rejections. The snow was falling hard. The wind screamed through the empty streets. It was a dark and cold night on the edge of a human settlement. Lights inside homes were warm, but outside, death waited in the cold. Figure moved slowly along the street, shaking, weak, barely able to walk. She was not human. Her skin was pale blue, and her fingers long and thin. Her face was covered by a torn cloth, but her bright purple eyes showed fear and hope. She held something close to her chest, a small bundle wrapped in worn fabric. The bundle moved. It was a child, her daughter. The child was silent, too tired to cry. The alien woman knocked on the first door. No answer. She knocked again, her hand trembling. A voice shouted, "Go away." She stepped back. Tears formed in her eyes, but she didn't stop. She turned to the next house and the next. Each time the answer was the same. "No, get lost, freak, go back to your kind." Some slammed the door before she even spoke. Others cursed at her. One even threw hot water near her feet to scare her off. She knocked on 17 doors, 17 cold rejections. Her body was freezing. Her child's breathing was getting slower. Her legs gave out, and she fell to her knees near the last house. Her breath turned to mist as she sobbed quietly. Then she saw one more house. The 18th. It was small, old, and quiet. No lights in the windows. No noise. She had nothing left. But she got up. For her child. Just one more door. She walked to the porch, her steps weak and unsteady. She lifted her hand and knocked. Once, twice. No answer. She turned to leave. Then, the door creaked open. A man stood there. Human. Tall, with tired eyes and a short beard. He wore a warm sweater and held a mug of coffee in one hand. He looked down at the strange woman in the snow. She was soaked, shaking, half frozen. He noticed the bundle in her arms. She stared back, her lips trying to speak. No words came. The child gave a soft, weak cough. The man looked around, then stepped forward. "Do you need help?" he asked slowly. She didn't answer. Her eyes rolled back, her knees gave in. She collapsed forward. He dropped his mug and caught her just before she hit the ground. The bundle in her arms slipped. The cloth opened slightly, revealing the pale face of a small alien child. Eyes closed, mouth open, skin turning pale purple. Man stood there, stunned. Snow was falling harder now. He looked around again. No one was watching. No one cared. He didn't ask questions. He carried them both inside. Inside his home, the air was warm. He gently placed the woman on the couch and set the child next to her. He ran to get blankets, towels, and warm water. He started a fire in the old fireplace, the flames quickly filling the room with light and heat. He returned and saw her eyes, open slightly. She looked around confused and afraid. Then she looked at her daughter. The man held out a cup of warm tea. She stared at him. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said softly. "Drink. You're safe now." Her lips moved slowly. "Why? You help?" Her voice was rough and strange. He looked at her, puzzled. "Because someone should." She looked at him for a long time, then took the cup with shaky hands. The child stirred beside her, letting out a small breath. She smiled weakly and pulled the blanket tighter over her baby. The man stepped back, giving them space. He sat on the floor, watching them quietly. Snow fell outside. The wind howled. But inside was silence and warmth. The fire crackled gently in the small living room. Warmth filled the space, pushing back the cold that still clung to the woman's clothes. She sat wrapped in a thick blanket, her daughter held close to her chest. The human man sat nearby, silent, watching her with curious eyes. The alien woman looked around the room with caution. She was still afraid. Her eyes moved from the old, wooden table to the shelf filled with strange human books. It was quiet, Too quiet. She didn't understand why he hadn't thrown her out. Her daughter shifted in her arms and gave a weak whimper. The man stood up slowly. "She needs food," he said gently. The woman didn't reply. He walked to the kitchen, filled a bowl with warm soup, and returned. He placed it on the small table near her. A spoon rested beside it. She looked at it, then at him. He sat down again, far from her, to show he meant no harm. She hesitated, then picked up the spoon. Her hands shook. She fed a small spoonful to her daughter, who swallowed slowly, her tiny mouth barely moving. Then the woman brought the spoon to her own lips. It was hot, but it tasted like life. Tears ran down her face as she ate. Quiet, broken tears. No one had fed her in days. No one had even spoken to her kindly. The man looked away to give her privacy. After a few minutes, she spoke. "You... name?" He turned his head. "David." She nodded slowly. Lyra. My child. Name? Mia." David smiled a little. "Nice to meet you, Lyra. And Mia." Lyra touched her daughter's forehead. "Mia, sick, not food, not sleep, not warm." Her voice cracked. "We run, far." David leaned forward, more curious now. "Run from what?" She looked at the fire. Its glow danced in her large, tired eyes. "Slavers," she whispered. "They come, take, sell, hurt. Mia, born in cage." David's hands tightened. He didn't speak. 17 doors, Lyra said suddenly, her voice filled with pain. "I knock. 17. All close, no help." David nodded slowly. "You found the right one on number 18. Lyra looked at him. "Why, you help?" David looked into the fire. "My mother used to say, when someone knocks in the cold, you answer. That's all." Lyra didn't understand everything, but she understood enough. She whispered, "Thank you." Mia coughed again, sharp and dry. Lyra held her tighter. David stood up. "Wait here." He went to another room and returned with medicine, simple human syrup for coughing. He read the label, checked the amount, and poured a little into a spoon. Lyra stared at him with wide eyes. "You give?" He nodded. "Might help." She took the spoon carefully. "Human help." "Strange," she murmured. Mia swallowed the syrup slowly. Minutes passed. The fire warmed them all. Then a strange thing happened. The lights in the house flickered again. The fire grew brighter, then dimmed. A cold wind rushed through the chimney, even though the windows were shut. David stood up quickly. He looked at Mia. Her small hand was raised slightly. Her eyes were closed, but her skin was glowing faintly blue again. David stepped closer. "She's doing that?" Lyra nodded. "Power, not normal, not trained. Slavers want. They hunt." David stared in shock. "She's gifted." "Yes," Lyra said. "But gift is danger." The fire returned to normal. Mia's glow faded. She fell asleep again, her chest rising and falling slowly. Lyra sighed and leaned her head back. She sleep. First time in many days. David walked to the window. He looked outside. Snow was still falling, but something didn't feel right. He turned back. "Are they still following you?" Lyra nodded slowly. "Yes. Always follow." David locked the door and pulled the curtains shut. He checked his old rifle leaning near the shelf. It was dusty, but it still worked. "You can stay here," he said firmly, "as long as you need." Lyra looked surprised. "You trust me?" David smiled. "You knocked." I answered. She stared at him for a long time. Then slowly she smiled back. It was her first smile in a very, very long time. That night, while David slept near the fire with one eye open, Mia opened her glowing eyes in the dark. She whispered something in an alien tongue, and miles away, something heard her. The morning came slowly. Snow still covered the ground outside, but the wind had calmed. Inside the cabin, the fire had burned low. David sat in a chair with a blanket wrapped around him. He hadn't slept much. His eyes were fixed on the little girl sleeping on the couch beside her mother. Mia looked peaceful now. No more glowing, no more coughing. Just small breaths and soft dreams. Lyra opened her eyes and blinked. She looked around, afraid at first, but then remembered where she was. David stood up. "You slept. That's good." She nodded. "Warm. Safe." He went to the kitchen and made some toast with honey and brought it over. "You and Mia should eat." Lyra took it with both hands. "Sweet," she said after the first bite, surprised. David sat down across from her. "I need to know something. Is she dangerous?" Lyra looked up quickly, alarmed. "No, she child, just different." David leaned forward. "But she made the fire flicker. The lights, too. That wasn't normal." Lyra sighed. Her eyes dropped to the floor. "I tell truth." David nodded. "Please." "She born in slavership. No father, no name. I give name, Mia." David listened carefully. Other children in cages, but Mia, she glow. Power come when she scared, when sad. Slavers test. Her, hurt her, try make her use power for them. David's fists clenched. I take her, run away, hide on junk ship, crash on snow world. I try knock doors, beg. Her voice broke. They look at us like garbage. David's voice was quiet. Not everyone is like that. I know now, Lyra whispered. David stood up and looked at Mia again. What kind of power does she have? I don't know all, Lyra said. She change heat, control small things, sometimes read thoughts. David's eyes widened. She's psychic? Maybe, but she not trained. She only child. David walked to the fireplace and stared at the flames. She needs protection. You both do. Just then, Mia stirred. Her eyes opened, calm, not glowing this time. She looked at her mother, then at David. He smiled. Good morning, Mia. She blinked slowly. Good morning. Lyra was shocked. She speak. She never speak to stranger. David kneeled beside her. It's okay. You're safe now. Maya smiled weakly and reached out, placing a small hand on David's arm. David felt a strange warmth move through him, like a wave of calm. She trusts you, Lyra whispered. But the peaceful moment didn't last long. A loud knock hit the door, 3 times. Heavy, angry. David's eyes shot to the window. A black vehicle sat just outside, military style. He moved to the door quietly and looked through the peephole. 2 men in dark uniforms stood outside. Their eyes were scanning the cabin. One held a scanner device. The other held a blaster rifle. Stay quiet, David said in a low voice. Lyra pulled Mia close and ducked behind the couch. David opened the door slightly. Can I help you? He asked. The man with the scanner spoke. Sorry to disturb. We're tracking a stolen asset, an alien female and a child. Dangerous. Seen anything strange last night? David kept his face calm. Nope. Just me here. Got snowed in. The soldier looked past him. Any power surges? Old house? Fire makes it flicker sometimes. The second man narrowed his eyes. You sure you didn't hear anything odd? David chuckled lightly. Only thing I heard was my pipes freezing. The men exchanged glances. Be careful, the first one said. If you see anything, report it. The child's unstable. David nodded. Will do. He closed the door, locked it, bolted it, then turned. Lyra stood up, holding Mia tight. They find us? She whispered. Not yet, David said. I lied. But they'll be back. Lyra's eyes were full of fear. You lie. For us? David nodded. You're not leaving. Not in this storm. We'll hide better. She stepped closer. They hurt people who lie for us. I've faced worse, David said, grabbing his old bag. We need to be ready if they come again. He handed Lyra a flashlight, a wool coat, and boots. You help like family, she said softly. David looked at Mia. Maybe that's what we are now. Snow fell heavier that night. The wind howled around the cabin, shaking the windows like a warning. Inside, the air was tense. Lyra sat on the floor with Mia asleep in her lap. David checked the locks for the third time. Something's not right, David muttered, peeking through a crack in the curtain. Lyra didn't speak. Her arms were wrapped around her daughter tightly. David walked back to her and whispered, "They'll return." They didn't believe me. Lyra looked up, her face pale. "We leave?" "Not yet," he said. "Too dangerous outside. They'll search the roads." He opened a small wooden door under the stairs. A dark space waited below. "The basement," David said. "It's cold but safe, no windows, thick walls." Lyra nodded. Carefully, she stood and carried Mia down the creaky steps. David followed, setting up blankets, a lantern, and food. The basement was quiet. Shadows moved in the corners and the stone walls held the chill. But it was better than being seen. "I'll stay upstairs," David said. "If they come again, I'll handle it." Lyra looked at him. "Why risk so much?" David smiled faintly. "Because you knocked, and I answered." He climbed back upstairs and closed the trapdoor, placing a rug over it. Hours passed. David sat in the armchair near the fire, rifle resting on his lap. His eyes stayed open, even as the fire began to die. Then, lights. A vehicle stopped outside. Footsteps. Loud knock. David stood. He didn't go to the door this time. He opened the peephole quietly. 4 men, not 2. This time they looked serious. One of them stepped forward and shouted, "Open up! We have orders to search." David hesitated, then took a deep breath and opened the door halfway. "You again." "This is a security operation," the soldier said firmly. "We detected an energy pulse near your home. We need to look inside." David blocked the doorway. "You have a warrant?" The soldier stepped closer. "This isn't a question, civilian." David stared him down. "This is my house." "Another?" Soldier pushed forward. "Move!" David didn't. The first soldier pulled out a small tablet. "Energy scans show psychic output from within 50 meters. If you're hiding something, we'll find it." David frowned. "Like I told you, I live alone." The soldier narrowed his eyes. "Then you won't mind if we take a look?" David thought fast. His fingers tightened on the door. "Fine, but I want a name and badge number. I don't let armed men into my home without knowing who they are." The UI soldiers looked at each other. One of them finally said, "Commander Rec ID 7447. David pretended to write it down. "All right, come in." They entered with sharp eyes, boots thudding against the wooden floor. One soldier scanned the rooms. Another walked toward the fireplace. One moved toward the stairs. David followed him casually. "No upstairs, just attic junk." The soldier grunted and turned around. Then the fourth soldier stepped near the rug. "David's." Heart jumped. "Step away from there," he said quickly. The soldier raised an eyebrow. "Why? What's under this rug?" David forced a smile. "My dog died there, buried under the floor. I don't like anyone standing on it." The soldier stared at him, then stepped back slowly. "Creepy," he muttered. After 10 tense minutes, they found nothing. The leader stepped forward. "If you're lying, you'll regret it." David kept his face calm. "I'm not." They left. As the sound of their vehicle faded, David shut the door, locked it, and dropped to his knees. Sweat ran down his forehead. He lifted the rug and opened the trapdoor. Lyra looked up at him, her face pale. "They go?" He nodded. "Barely." She crawled out slowly, carrying Mia. David looked at the girl. She stayed quiet. She felt danger, Lyra whispered. She'd protect herself, with silence. He poured her a cup of warm tea. She drank it with shaking hands. I don't understand humans, Lyra said quietly. Some cruel, some kind. Why you kind? David looked at her and spoke gently. Because your child reminds me of my sister. She died when I was young, sick, cold. No one helped her. I swore I'd never turn someone away again. Lyra placed a hand on his. You saved us. But outside, in the snow-covered bushes, a small red light blinked. The soldiers had left something behind. A hidden tracker. They weren't gone for good. The snowstorm returned with fury. Thick white flakes crashed against the windows. The wind screamed like a wild beast outside. The power lines near the cabin buzzed and snapped, until finally, everything went black. The lights in David's home flickered once, then died completely. David stood up quickly. That's not good, he said. Lyra held Mia close, her eyes wide. What happened? David grabbed a flashlight. Power's out. Maybe the storm knocked down a line. He opened the window curtain just a little. Everything outside was covered in snow. The sky was gray and angry, but something else caught his eye. The blinking red light, now brighter, buried in the snow near the porch. His heart dropped. He quickly shut the curtain. We've been tagged. A tracker. They left it outside when they searched. Lyra's face turned pale. They know now. Soon, David said. Maybe hours. Maybe less. Mia stirred in her mother's arms. Cold, she whispered. David brought every blanket he had. We can't leave in this storm. Roads are buried. Even they'll wait till the snow slows. But if they come, Lyra said softly, they will take her. David looked at Mia. Her little hands were turning blue. Her eyes glowed faintly, just like before. She's doing it again, he whispered. The fire in the fireplace had gone out with the power, but as Mia whispered something in her sleep, a spark appeared in the ashes. A moment later, the flames returned, stronger than before. Lyra gasped. She control fire now? David shook his head slowly. She's not controlling it. She's feeding it, with her energy. The fire burned hotter. Warmth returned to the room, but the furniture near it trembled. David pulled Lyra back. Her powers growing. Mia's body shook. She cried softly in her sleep. David knelt beside her. She's scared. That's what's doing this. Should I wake her? Lyra asked. No. Let her dream. Calm dreams. Talk to her. Lyra held Mia gently, humming a soft alien lullaby. Mia's body slowly relaxed. The glow faded, and the fire settled down. David let out a breath of relief. She doesn't know how to control it, he said, but maybe she doesn't have to. Maybe she just needs love. Lyra looked up. Slavers hate love. They beat it out of us. But here, she feels it again. Suddenly, a loud crack sounded from above. David ran to the window. A dark ship broke through the clouds, not military, not human. It was black and sleek, shaped like a claw. It hovered above the forest near his cabin, scanning the ground with red beams. Lyra stood. They found us. David grabbed his rifle. We're not giving up. You can't fight them alone, she whispered. He looked at her. I'm not alone anymore. Lyra stared into his eyes. You would die for us? David nodded. I've already made that choice. Outside, the alien ship dropped a small pod. It hit the ground softly and hissed. A hunter stepped out. 7 feet tall, metal armor, electric spear in hand. David watched as the figure walked toward the cabin. One of them, he said. A tracker. Lyra looked at Mia. She's too weak to hide again. David helped her and Mia back into the basement. Then he moved quickly, setting traps, moving shelves, grabbing tools and sharp metal pieces. He placed an explosive canister near the back door, rigged to trigger if opened. He checked everything, twice. Then he waited. A shadow passed the window. A hand reached the door. The knob turned. Boom! The back door exploded. David ran to the side with his rifle. A second hunter appeared at the front. David shot. The bullet bounced off armor, but the blast pushed the hunter back into the snow. Suddenly, the lights flickered on. David blinked. The house was glowing. Not with electricity, but with blue light coming from the basement cracks. He opened the trap door. Mia floated 2 feet above the floor. Her eyes open, glowing bright. She wasn't afraid anymore. "I won't let them hurt you," she whispered, not to her mother, not to David, but to the world. Everything in the house shook. Outside, the 2 hunters froze. Mia raised her hand. The snowstorm stopped. Time itself seemed to pause. Then, with one motion, she pulled all the heat from the air and froze the 2 hunters solid. David stared, stunned. Lyra covered her mouth. Mia slowly floated down. Her eyes returned to normal. She collapsed into her mother's arms. "She saved us," Lyra whispered. David nodded. "No. You saved her. And she saved us all." The frozen hunters still stood like statues outside the cabin, covered in snow and ice. But David knew it wasn't over. He stood at the window, gripping his rifle tightly. Lyra sat beside the fireplace, wrapping Mia in warm clothes. The girl had stopped glowing, but her small body was weak. Her power had drained her completely. "She's sleeping again," Lyra said softly. "But not scared now. Just tired." David nodded. "She did something impossible. She stopped them." Lyra looked at him. "But others will come. More hunters. Bigger ones." David checked the bullets in his gun. "Then we make a plan." Outside, the slaver ship in the sky began to move. It circled slowly, scanning the area again. Red lights blinked under its wings. A deep hum echoed across the forest. "Why do they want her so badly?" David asked. "Because Mia is not just powerful," Lyra replied. "She is rare. Her kind, maybe 1 in a billion. She was born during a solar storm. Her energy is pure." David looked back. "They don't see a child. They see a weapon." Lyra nodded sadly. "And weapons are never free." Suddenly the cabin shook. A bright light burst through the roof as a metal rod dropped from the ship, slamming into the ground like a spear. A large figure slid down the rod, landing with a heavy thud. It was twice the size of the last hunter, armored in black and gold. It wore a helmet with red glowing eyes and held a long plasma blade. David's eyes narrowed. "That one looks important." Lyra grabbed Maya and backed toward the basement. "He is a captain. He hunts gifted children himself." David handed her his only communication device. "If I don't make it, run. Use this to call the outpost I told you about." Lyra stared at him. "You can't fight that thing alone." David smiled. "I'm not alone. I have Mia's courage and your strength. That's enough." He stepped outside, snow crunching under his boots. The cold burned his face, but he didn't stop. The captain turned toward him, eyes glowing. "Give the child," the hunter said in a deep, robotic voice. "This is your last chance, human." David raised his rifle. "You'll have to go through me." The hunter leaped forward fast like lightning. David rolled aside and fired. Sparks flew off the armor. The plasma blade sliced through a tree beside him, sending it crashing down. David ran back inside, heart pounding. He grabbed a sharp metal rod and jammed it into the fireplace. "What are you doing?" Lyra shouted. "Making a trap," David said. "Fire, metal, and one very angry hunter." The cabin shook again as the door burst open. The captain stepped in, blade humming. David stood near the fireplace, holding a glowing rod in both hands. The hunter raised his blade and charged. At the last second, David dodged and slammed the heated rod into the hunter's chest. The armor cracked just a little, but enough. Mia's eyes opened downstairs. She whispered one word. "Now." From the basement, a burst of blue energy surged up through the floor, striking the weak point in the hunter's armor. The captain froze. His blade fell, and then his body shattered into dust. The cabin went silent. David fell to his knees, breathing hard. Lyra rushed to him. "You did it." He shook his head. "No, we did." Mia crawled out slowly, glowing softly. She looked at the falling dust with calm eyes. "I don't want to fight," she said quietly. "But I will protect my family." Lyra hugged her. "You are brave." David stood. "We can't stay." That was the captain. "But the ship is still up there." Outside, the slaver ship let out a low roar. "It's preparing to fire," David said. "They want to destroy everything." Lyra looked up. "Then we need to leave. Now." David pulled out an old emergency beacon. "We only have one shot. I'll call the outpost." He pressed the button. A green light blinked. "Signal sent," he said. "They'll come, but we have to hold out." Lyra nodded. "Where do we go?" David opened the trapdoor under the floor. Old tunnels, mining shafts. They stretched for miles. They gathered what they could: food, water, blankets, and moved quickly. Mia was still weak, but her spirit was strong. As they disappeared into the tunnels, the cabin above began to shake. The slaver ship fired a bolt of plasma from the sky. The cabin exploded in fire and light, but no one was inside. The tunnels were cold and dark. David held a lantern as they walked through the narrow path deep under the earth. The walls were made of stone and metal, old mining supports still standing from decades ago. The air smelled like rust and wet earth. Lyra walked close behind, holding Mia tight. The girl was silent, her head resting on her mother's shoulder. Her glow had faded, but her eyes were calm now, not frightened like before. They had escaped the cabin, escaped the blast, escaped the hunter captain. But they had not escaped the danger. David stopped at a fork in the tunnel. He pulled out a small map from his pocket. "We keep left. There's a hidden outpost 2 miles that way. They should have received my signal by now." Lyra nodded. "I trust you." They walked for almost an hour. Mia whispered once or twice, asking if the bad ship was gone. David answered gently, "Yes, they think we're gone now." But even as he said it, he wasn't sure. They finally reached a sealed door. It was made of old steel with a broken keypad on the side. David knocked 3 times, then paused. Knocked twice more. A speaker crackled. "Who's there?" "David Cross," he answered. "Requesting safe passage. We have a child. Alien. Gifted. Urgent." There was silence. Then the door hissed and slid open. Warm air rushed out. A tall woman in military gear stood inside. She wore a jacket with the human resistance symbol on it. Her eyes scanned the group quickly. David stepped forward. "She's not a threat. She's just a child. But the slavers are hunting her. They already burned my home." The woman nodded. "We know. We picked up the energy pulse. Come in. You're safe here." They entered the underground shelter. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean, bright, and warm. There were beds, food, medicine, everything they needed. Mia looked around. With wide eyes. "It's nice," she whispered. Lyra smiled. "Safe," she added. Days passed. Mia was given rest and care. The doctors were amazed by her energy levels, but they were kind and gentle. She laughed for the first time, truly laughed. She played with other children in the underground halls. She colored on the walls. She slept without fear. David helped the engineers reinforce the base. Lyra cooked meals in the kitchen and slowly began to smile again. One night after dinner, David sat with Lyra under the heater. "Feels strange," he said. "I got used to snow and danger." Lyra chuckled. "I never thought I would feel warm again." They were quiet for a moment. Then David looked at her. "What will you do now?" She glanced at Mia playing with a toy nearby. "I don't know. I never had a choice before. Always running, hiding. You have one now," David said gently. "A choice." Lyra looked at him. "And if I choose to stay with you?" David smiled. Then I'd say, welcome home. That night something changed. Mia woke up crying, not from fear but from something she felt. David rushed in. What's wrong? They're coming, she whispered. They're angry. They know I'm alive. Alarms blared. The slaver ship had returned. Underground scanners picked them up, the commander shouted. They're digging. They know. About the tunnels, David looked at Mia. Can you stop them? She looked scared. Not alone. You're not alone, Lyra said firmly. Mia stood. Her hands began to glow, brighter than ever before. I can feel the ship, its heart, its mind. It's cold. Empty. David touched her shoulder. Then make it warm. Mia closed her eyes. Outside, the slaver ship paused in midair. Inside, lights flickered. Engines stalled. The cold ship began to heat from within. The ship's captain screamed, This child, she's changing us. The slaver ship began to rise again, shaking, groaning, and then it simply left, fled into the sky, gone. 3 weeks later. The underground base became a new home. Lyra worked in the garden tunnels growing food. David became part of the local defense force, fixing shields and training others. Mia went to school, learned to write, learned to laugh. One day, she stood in front of the small gathering of humans and aliens alike. She took the microphone and said, My name is Mia. I was born in a cage, but now I live in the light because a human opened his door. The crowd cheered. Lyra wiped tears from her eyes. David smiled proudly. She had knocked on 17 doors that turned her away, but the 18th gave her a family and a future.